Welcome back. You're watching Eye on India, and we're discussing the clarifications that corporate India seeks from the government on the recently announced corporate tax cut. Mr. Parthasarathy, I want to go back to the larger issue, and this seems to be even the timing of the announcement ahead of the Prime Minister's visit to the US, really an attempt to draw in foreign direct investment into India on a much wider basis. And if you heard what the Prime Minister had to say while he was speaking in the US a few days ago, where he also talked about this being just the beginning and perhaps even parity coming in on things like capital gains on equity linked investments. So I would imagine that once again people are going to be in wait and watch mode to see what more they will see from the government before moving ahead. But from an FDI perspective, do you believe that this could be a game changer?
I think clearly it is a game changer. The reason why I'm saying is that till now there has been a lot of thought about saying that the whole concept of how they will be dealt up doesn't seem that clear, or the path didn't seem clear. We talked about 30 going down to 20, 30 plus going down to 30 and 30 going down to 25. But we didn't see many things coming along and seemed that there is a slate of flux for the big companies. Now this is a clear path where he said, I've done some and I will do more.
Yeah.
Come, and therefore it's a welcoming set. It is as big a sentiment input as it is a factual input.
Mr. Kapadia, how is that going to work? And this is what everybody, I think, would want clarity on, because the 2019 ordinance provides that a domestic company has the option of selecting a lower tax rate of 22% under Section 115BAA or 115BAB. Now, the benefit of this reduced tax rate is not applicable to either foreign companies or PEs of foreign companies. So, as we speak of this business of drawing in large ticket FDI, how is it going to work on the ground?
No, so Shereen, here, a domestic company, let me clarify, a domestic company, even if it is owned 100% by a foreign shareholder, is covered, is eligible. So I don't think there's an issue on company, because as long as the company is registered, is set up in India and registered here. So the idea is to encourage a corporatization and not project offices or branch offices of foreign companies.
Tax is only one aspect, Mr. Kapadia, as we all know, and the hope is that as we move towards a regime where you will have a flat rate structure, a low rate structure, you'll do away with this business of exemptions, which has often led to large-scale litigation, that we will move much faster on this curve of the ease of doing business. So do you think that that is going to be one of the big areas that companies will also draw comfort from?
It will, and let me just add one suggestion, if I may. What would really help, particularly with this new regime of 17%, is that if we can come out with some kind of an advance ruling, not the one we have today, which is quasi-judicial, go to a court and all, but some kind of an administrative advance ruling where an investor walks in, you say, these are the conditions, we have examined your conditions. If your facts on the ground meet with those conditions, we'll give you an advance ruling that this will be applicable to you. That certainty would be a tremendous, fillip to any new investor, and that's something which government should seriously consider doing, especially for this new concessional rate of 17%.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I think predictability and certainty have been the two casualties when we talk about tax treatment in India, and I think investors, domestic and foreign, would certainly look forward to that. But Mr. Parthasarathy, if there were to be an unfavorable view, especially when it comes to the utilization of MAT credit, our understanding is that that revenues thinking at this point in time is not something that industry may like, but no final decision has been taken. But if that were to be the case, how much of a negative would that be?
So fundamentally, just wanted to say that MAT credit is nothing but losses that I was not able to absorb. Yeah, so it's actually physical loss of business loss, which I have not been able to put up, that in some form or the other creates the MAT credit. So this is a fundamental issue, so I think it's not that easy. The question will be how this will be done. This is what is my assessment. Having said that, suppose if your hypothetical question saying that this is a guillotine and therefore you have to swallow it in order to do, then each company will have to weigh what is the credit versus what is the benefit. And you go back to the original one, then you go back to what Sudhir said, you can choose the old rate now, continue with that regime of tax MAT credit, and then you decide to go into the new rate. So the movement into the new rate is what will be the new regime what will be delayed.
So let me end then by asking you, Mr. Parthasarathy, given the fact that there is a new corporate tax regime that's been put in place, where in an era of interest rates coming down even further, and the expectation is that they'll be lower even from here on, what is this going to mean in terms of private capex? Finally, are we likely to see private capex pick up, and by when do you estimate that turnaround?
Yeah, so very quickly put that, like the monsoon, this is another, monsoon declared by the government, so and that gives positive sentiment elsewhere. So let's hope that focuses this is the fulcrum on which the demand cycle changes. Okay. The other big problem is liquidity, which even as we speak is said to be addressing.
But Mr. Parthasarathy, yesterday the finance minister did a press conference with all private bankers seated with her, from the Uday Kotaks to the Renu Karnad, saying not one banker has raised, or NBFC has raised, the issue of liquidity being a problem. She stated this on record through that press conference several times over.
So unke muh mein ghee shakkar, and we expect the implementation as the ground level to implement. See, Shereen, the problem is not with me. The problem is the dealers and the vendors, whether they are getting credit, and due to the NPA situation, the disbursement has not been the problem. Okay, so I'm relating to that as a liquidity problem, not to corporates.
Sure.
Okay? So I think this is also being addressed. I'm not saying it's not. Okay, so it will come. And like you said nicely, and if all this amalgamation comes together, then I think the demand cycle is a very positive thing. I have been hard pressed to put time. I wish I was a better astrologer than I am. But the bend is round the corner.
Mr. Kapadia, I'm going to try your skills at astrology since you've been probably spending burning the midnight oil speaking to clients. What's your sense on demand revival, capex revival?
Well, no, we always say we only advise businesses, we don't do businesses. So we can't say when the capex revival will come in. But look, I think the one thing we have seen, and I alluded to the US experience, and we have seen it from our colleagues, we have seen it when you visit that country, that sentiment which turned for the better was a huge, and that those animal spirits we clearly saw being unleashed in the US market. We have seen Indian companies, including Partha, and that is public knowledge, investments being made in the US by Indian companies as well, to not just avail of the tax rate, but that gives a huge sentiment push, and there's no and it puts cash into your hand. Now it's up to you what you do with that cash. Some companies have started reducing prices, some will say I will invest, some will say I'll put in R&D. My view is that once there is more cash available in private hands, it will lead to some kind of growth directly or indirectly.
That's right. Well, that is the expectation, and that's the hope. Since you brought up the US example, well, a lot of corporates in fact chose to use that cash to go in for things like buybacks, etc. But we'll have to see how that plays out here. The hope is that we will see a change not just in demand but also private sector investment. Sudhir Kapadia and Mr. Parthasarathy, always a pleasure. Appreciate you joining us here on Eye on India. We will wrap things up here, but there's a lot more coming up. Don't go anywhere.